Seven Samurai, the film that has inspired Hollywood icons such as George Lucas and the Godfather director himself, Francis Ford Coppola. This is the film that has influenced many Hollywood movies. Some recent examples of this are Mad Max Fury Road and Pixar's A Bug's Life. The film had quite a long production process, however, as it went on much longer than the director himself, Akira Kurosawa, or the production company Toho was expecting. But it all started when Kurosawa and his co-writer, Shinobu Hashimoto, planned on making a film about the life of a samurai, who then makes a horrible mistake that upsets his master, which leads the samurai to eventually return home and commit ritual suicide. The idea of this script was called A Day in the Life. Kurosawa soon scrapped that idea and then came up with a film that was about 5 samurai battles that was told from the lives of 5 iconic samurai swordsmen. But once again, that idea was also thrown away because Kurosawa felt that the movie would just be a series of climaxes. Soon after, the producer of the film, Sojiro Motoki, then did some research and found out samurai used to help guard peasant villagers in exchange for food and a place to stay, which is where the idea of Seven Samurai was created. The writing process took 6 weeks, and it got to the point while writing the script where Kurosawa and his co-writer didn't even answer phone calls because of how hard they were working. But one idea that always remained the same with the script were the characteristics of each of the different samurai. Before the writing process was even beginning, Kurosawa took notes of what qualities each of the 7 samurai will have. Seven Samurai then had a production budget of around $70,000, which was the general amount that Japanese film studios would spend on their movies. Seven Samurai took a whopping 148 days to shoot in the span of over a year. Part of the reason it took so long to shoot was because Toho had to shut down the production 2 different times since Kurosawa had gone over his budget during the process of shooting the film, so Toho needed time in order to gain back some money to finish the movie, which then led to the production budget of Seven Samurai to be a grand total of $500,000, which at the time was the most any Japanese film studio had ever spent on a movie. During these shutdowns, Kurosawa wouldn't get upset or scream to the top of his lungs that he's not making his movie. Instead, he'd stay calm and actually go fishing because he believed the studio would find money to finish his film. Kurosawa then claimed that the budget he was given for Seven Samurai is only a portion of the production budgets that films in the West get, which is kind of true considering the 1954 Hollywood film Sabrina had a production budget of $2.2 million. Not to mention, 2 years later in 1956, The Ten Commandments had a production budget of $13 million, which is a little bit bigger than $500,000. Toho Productions was also financing a Godzilla movie at the time, so backing up both films financially led Toho almost going bankrupt. Meanwhile, the media called Kurosawa an emperor for the way he'd handle things such as his production budgets. Kurosawa then got frustrated from all the name-calling he was receiving by the press, but he then responded by saying, "You try to give a film a little pictorial scope and the journalists jump on you for spending too much money. That is what I really hate about them. They are only an extended form of advertising. They talk big and make pictures sound important to make themselves seem more important. The more they try, the greater they lie." That wasn't the only problem Seven Samurai faced during production. For example, there is a scene in the picture where a mill is being burnt down, so the crew on the set had to put up fabric to light the mill on fire, but the production crew believed that the mill would still be usable for the rest of shooting. Sadly, that did not happen as the mill totally burnt down, so the mill was burnt and rebuilt 3 different times so Kurosawa can shoot the footage that he needed. But that wasn't the only problem with fire, as there is another scene in the movie where a fortress is being burnt down, which led the production crew to put gasoline all around the fortress. Then once shooting of the scene began, the fire started quickly and was much hotter than the crew expected it to be. The cast still continued on with the scene, with Kurosawa encouraging them to keep going. One of the actors that was in the scene explained that the fire got so hot that the grass that was on the cliffs, which was located above the set, burnt off. They faced an opposite problem, however, with the final battle sequence, where Kurosawa used 3 cameras to make sure he caught the parts of the action sequence that could only be shot once. But because of the delays in production, instead of shooting the finale in the summer, it was shot in February, where they had to make sure and shoot the film right after the snow had melted. The cast and crew also had to work in mud since it's raining during the final battle. Apparently, Kurosawa got so cold that he began to lose his toenails. After years of literal blood, sweat, and tears going into the making of this film, Seven Samurai ended up making $2.3 million at the box office. Take that, Avengers Endgame! The film played at its full runtime of 3 hours and 27 minutes in Japan. However, when the film reached the Venice Film Festival, Seven Samurai's runtime was cut down as scenes were taken out mainly from the first half of the film, which led some people to complain, saying that the movie was confusing, which is a claim that Kurosawa himself agreed with. The movie was cut down 50 minutes by the time it reached the States. The full runtime of the film wasn't shown in theaters until 2002, when it was re-released in the United States. It was then released on its full runtime again on DVD, but the runtime wasn't the only thing that changed when Seven Samurai was released in the US. Because when it came out in the United States, it did not go under the name Seven Samurai. Instead, it went under the name of The Magnificent Seven. But when MGM decided to remake the film, The Magnificent Seven was then changed back to its original title, Seven Samurai. That way the remake can then be called, as we know it today, The Magnificent Seven. Seven Samurai today is known for its influences amongst many Hollywood films, as well as big franchises such as Star Wars. And at the end of the day, Seven Samurai will go down as one of the most important films to ever be made.